Ernst Haeckel was a scientist who, back in the 1800s, made the claim that homologous structures in the embryos of humans and chickens and fish are evidence that of phylogeny provides evidence of evolution. In other words, structures similar in human beings in the embryonic stage of development are evidence that we once had fish gills because they were our ancestors.
Okay, just to temporarily sidetrack, notice the list of scientists that will appear later in the background of Neph's video. These are supposed to be all the scientists who apparently do not support evolution. Shame we won't be able to read the list, but judging by past form, this list will comprise of mechanical engineers and the like, and genuine evolutionists who once said something has been taken totally out of context. That's how these lists work. No, what we need, Neph, is a list of professional biologists who don't support evolution. Now that would be worth taking note of. We also have the claim that many evolutionary scientists are closet creationists who are afraid of losing their jobs. Well, let's look at one of the creationist flagships, horizontal gene transfer. In 1959, a group of Japanese scientists discovered horizontal gene transfer in E. coli-like bacteria. Did they immediately convert to young Earth creationists? I doubt it, else they would be entrenched in creationist folklore. Well, perhaps they were converted but didn't go public for fear of losing their jobs. But if that was the case, why would they blow their cover and produce something that allegedly disproves evolution? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But then again, what does make sense from anything in creationism? Incidentally, horizontal gene transfer does not discredit evolution in any way, but that is for another time. So, back to the Haeckel drawings.
Ancestors. He was discredited for this claim and shamed badly, and his fallacious drawings were revealed as false.
Well, they weren't 100% false, but he did do some rather dishonest alterations in order to emphasize his point. Also, as well as his alterations, he was wrong on his interpretation of those embryos. What's important here is that he was called out by his fellow scientists. Why don't you do a video on them, Neph? What was the name of one of them? Some bloke called Charles Darwin. You may have heard of him.
Now, Kenneth Miller, who was a prominent evolutionist scientist, he has reworked this Haeckel's drawing thing. They're still putting forth this same lie. And in his college textbook called Biology, he has similar drawings to Ernst Haeckel's in his book.
Yeah, that's right, Neph. Similar drawings. Corrected drawings. The study of embryology did not go away because of Haeckel's misdemeanours. And this is the point, Neph. Why are you reduced to publicizing a 19th century supporter of evolution? Evolutionary theory was in its infancy in those days. If you want to highlight 19th century scientists, then why not tell us all about Russell Wallace? He came up with exactly the same conclusions as Darwin, but by looking at nature from a totally different standpoint.
We have discovered since then that...
We have discovered? You mean the we, as in evolutionary biologists?
For example, the functions in the neck of a human being, which were once believed to be remnant of fish gills, they're now discovered to become part of the human ear, you see. So that's locked into a morphological design, you see. Those features become something, and this becomes something, and that becomes something else.
You see, Neph, this is where you don't quite get it. Of course, no modern evolutionary embryologist supports Haeckel's recapitulation theory. This incorrect theory basically implies that the embryo of an organism goes through all the evolutionary stages of its ancestors. However, at the early stages, a fish and human embryo do look remarkably similar. The human embryo even has a tail, just like that of the fish embryo. The human embryo later even develops and loses an empty yolk sac. There's a nice touch from the creator. Vertebrate embryos have 5 to 7 pouches, separated by grooves that lie on each side of the future head. These pouches, or branchial arches, are not gills, even in fish, but apart from the first, do become gills later on in the fish. Each arch contains tissues that develop into nerves, blood vessels, muscles, and bone or cartilage. In fish, the first arch becomes the jaw, and the remainder become the gills, with little change in structure. Consider the circulatory system. Our initial fish-like system turns into that similar to an amphibian embryo. In amphibians, the embryonic vessels turn directly to adult vessels, but ours continued to change further into a system resembling that of an embryonic reptile. Again, in reptiles, the system develops into an adult system. But in mammals, further changes are added to the embryo, turning it into a true mammalian circulatory system. Why would any creator go to the bother of causing such a sequence of events in the vertebrate circulatory system? Not to mention, at the same time, making it totally different to invertebrate embryos. We must of course remember that we are dealing with just embryos here, and not the adult of any species. Nobody is claiming that the whole evolutionary history is expressed in the development of the embryo.
Haeckel proposed that transverse clefts in the human neck were vestigial of gill slits. But the evidence showed that this was not true. They become part of the human ear during embryonic development. So Don Exodus II's claim that the problem with Haeckel's drawings was because of exaggeration is false. It was because of what he claimed about the illustrations itself. That these one feature in a human embryo is a vestigial of a fish gill. That was the reason he was shamed for it. Not because he exaggerated the drawings, was because of his claim regarding the drawings.
You see, Neph, who gives a flying fig what a 19th century scientist believed? Nobody in Haeckel's day, let alone today, supports embryo development by recapulation. Now let's look at what we, that's real scientists, and not armchair scientists like you and I, have found. The slits in a fish embryo are not gill slits. They merely become gill slits, but in fish only. And in other animals, these slits become other things by adding extra development to that exhibited by the previous embryo type. This asks some serious questions of intelligent design, and all but dismisses it into the bin where it belongs. Why would any designer cause an embryo to sequence through major evolutionary developments that mimic that of the fossil record? Now, if the human embryonic circulatory system started, say, as reptilian, then to amphibian, then to fish, then to human, then such an observation would indeed ask questions of evolution. But it would still be just as much a problem for ID as is the current observed sequence of embryonic development. Yet again, good old honest and simple observation supports evolution.